attention to producing like pseudo penises out of cut off flesh. It's so sickening. But again, I want to concentrate on your response because it's very interesting to me, because look, I've watched Canadians become selectively blind in Canada over the last 10 years, and I can understand why. I really can. It's like, here's the situation in Canada. For 150 years, every single one of our major institutions was middle of the road and reliable. The United Church, that's kind of the mainstream Protestant organization in Canada, or the Catholics, if you're French Canadian. You know, they had their problems, but they weren't completely pathologized. Let's put it that way. You could rely on them. Same with the news media. Same with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, even though it was a crown corporation. You could basically trust them. Same with the universities, same with the education system. It's not like it was top rate, but it wasn't riddled with pathology. And this is a terrible thing for someone with a conservative bent to indicate. It's like, well, none of that's true anymore. The federal Liberals subsidize the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation to the tune of $1.4 billion a year for no customers, right? But that's where everybody over 50 gets their news. It's like I told my mother a year ago, everything the CBC tells you is a lie. And she said, well, where am I supposed to get my news? Which is a really good question, right? So you imagine the conundrum that faces people. It's like all the institutions, you have two choices. Either those like me who are screaming about this are like right-wing conspiratorial lunatics, or all those things you thought you could trust, like the hierarchy you just described in the medical community, you can't trust that anymore. Well,
yes.
Well, first of all, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So even if you were just using a rule of thumb, you'd screen out the people who are, crying in the wilderness, so to speak. And this is even worse. But I'm very curious about it in relationship to you, because like you investigated the Twitter files, for example. You've already seen this happen. But you said that even in your case, what do you think it was that made you initially resistant to believing that this might be the case?
It's just too shocking. I mean, I think it's interesting for I was thinking about your work. You talk in some of your earlier work was about kind of finding yourself disoriented or thrown into a sense of chaos after these foundational things the things you had counted on or believed in. And I still had that around some sense of the medical system. I still had some confidence in the medical system before really getting into this. And I think that was part of what was a barrier. I mean, I read Abigail Schreier's book twice. I spoke to her on the phone multiple times. I think she grew a little frustrated with me because I think there was a sense among some gender critical folks of like, where are the men? I don't want to overly gender it, but there was a sense in which it's disproportionately women that have been raising the alarm about this. You're one of the, you and some of the other folks at Daily Wire are the exception, I think. But I think she was a little annoyed with me, which is like, why is it taking so long? We did publish a few articles on it. Then we got the WPATH files. But there's that sense of like, look, if this is really what it appears to be, and now we have the evidence overwhelming that it is. In the WPATH files, you have everything you need to know that this is just as awful as it appears to be. If that's true, then you cannot trust the American Medical Association, the Endocrine Society. You cannot trust the health insurance companies. You cannot trust the hospitals. You cannot trust the doctors. It means that the fancy word for this, of course, is iatrogenesis. That's when the medical system makes people sick. It's an old phenomenon. There's a wonderful book about it.
Fourth leading cause of death. Cause of death. And that was before. That was when it was functioning. Right. We have no idea what its contribution to death is now, especially in the aftermath of the vaccine compulsions. Right. We have no idea. We may never find out. Maybe we will, but we might not. Yeah, okay. So fine. So
I mean, your part of it is also I want to respect local knowledge, and so I know that the people that call themselves I knew that people that were calling themselves environmental NGOs weren't really saving the environment. Like that was my life's work for 20 years. I then discovered the same thing on homelessness. These are not people that are trying to end homelessness. They're trying to enable addiction and prevent the proper medical care of people with psychiatric disorders and serious mental illness. You then get to this, And it's such a grotesque perversion of the promise of healthcare, and a perversion, as you were saying before, of the lesbian, gay rights, and bisexual movement. They're literally destroying the bodies of people that, if you left them alone, would most of them would grow up to be gay, lesbian, and bisexual. So you should see the gay rights movement be the first out there to express outrage. But of course, they were the first to get co-opted by it. You know, the corruption of it. It starts with the people that would have been the first line of defense. If you had said there's going to be an effort to completely undermine the reproductive capacity and sexual function of gay, lesbian, and bisexual adolescents, you would have said, well, no, the lesbian, gay, bisexual movement would never allow that. No, they're part of it. It is the LGBT movement. They facilitated it.
Yeah.
So it's
okay. Let's zero in on that. Because we might as well go where
Yeah, for sure.
Angels fear to tread. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me let me contextualize this first.
Yeah.
Or can I?
I have a lot of thoughts on this too. I'm excited to get into this.
All right. So one of the things we wrestled with this Alliance for Responsible Citizenship that I put together, that you mentioned it earlier, that we had our first conference in October, is we have a family policy. Okay. And we had a lot of scraps about that. And part of the reason for that was there was a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was we had a number of people who were gay who were in our advisory group, and we were very happy to have them. But our sense was that the long-term relationship-oriented heterosexual couple is the bedrock for the communal enterprise, and that can't be replaced. Okay, and so then we argued about that a lot. And part of the reason we argued about that was because that relationship is honored in the breach more often by most people than it's honored in the what would you say, in the celebration. So like in my own family, for example, there's plenty of people, my own immediate and extended family. I suppose the divorce rate in my extended family is approximately the same as the national divorce rate. I don't imagine it's any different. And so, there's plenty of single mothers, there's plenty of divorced people, there's plenty of people who have affairs, there's plenty of gay people, there's plenty of single people. So there might be even a majority of those people, if you looked at it cross-sectionally. And so what does that mean? Does it mean that you destroy the ideal upon which community itself is founded? It's like, no, I don't think so. I think you have to live with the tension between the ideal and the exception. And it's something like you establish the core, and then there's a zone of tolerance for the margin. And not only tolerance, appreciation for the experimentation that could take place on the margin. But then you have the demand now to put the margin in the center.